The number on my screen is obscene. $98,742.18. It stares at me from the Department of Education's website. A digital monster, an unblinking cyclops guarding the gate to the rest of my life. This is the cost of my dream. A bachelor's degree. From NYU, a master's in public policy. It was my ticket out, my key to a life of purpose. Now, it's a ball and chain I drag with me into every single day. My monthly payment is more than my rent for the tiny Queens apartment I share with 2 other girls. I work 60 hours a week at a nonprofit that fights for affordable housing. A job I love, a job that is profoundly, almost comically, not lucrative. I am, in the clinical, unforgiving language of finance, drowning my phone buzzes. It's a text from James, thinking of you. How about dinner at Per Se tonight to celebrate the end of a long week? My treat, obviously. A knot of something complex and uncomfortable tightens in my stomach. Love, yes, but also a familiar chafing shame. My treat, obviously. The words are a casual reminder of the vast, gaping chasm between his world and mine. James does not live in a world of student loan portals and shared apartments in Queens. He lives in a world of effortless, inherited grace on the Upper East Side. A world of trust funds and summer homes and restaurants where the price of a single appetizer could cover my electricity bill for 3 months. For 2 years we have lived this strange, bifurcated life, my world of struggle and his world of splendor. And the strain, I can feel it, is starting to tear the delicate fabric of us apart. On my wrist, heavy and cool against my skin, is the other part of the problem. A Patek Philippe Calatrava, reference 5196R, rose gold case, brown alligator strap, a face of such simple, devastating elegance it makes my heart ache. It is, without question, the most beautiful, most expensive, and most stressful object I have ever touched in my life, a gift from him. A symbol, he had said, of our timeless love. Lately, it started to feel more like a gilded handcuff. I look from the obscene number on my student loan statement to the equally obscene object on my wrist, and I feel like I am being torn in two. 6 months ago, our story was much simpler. It was my 24th birthday. The fracture lines in our relationship were still invisible, hairline cracks beneath a smooth, happy surface. He had taken me to a restaurant that was so exclusive it didn't even have a sign. A quiet temple of haute cuisine where the waiters moved like ghosts and the wine list was thicker than my master's thesis. I was, as I always was, in his world, a nervous wreck. I was wearing a dress I had spent a month's grocery money on, and I still felt like an imposter. I grew up in a small town in New Jersey, in a loving, chaotic Filipino-American family where a celebration meant my mother cooking a massive pot of pancit and my father roasting a whole lechon in the backyard. It was a world of joyful, noisy abundance. This world, James's world, was one of quiet, minimalist, and terrifyingly expensive scarcity. A single perfectly seared scallop on a plate the size of a hubcap. You seem a million miles away. James had said, his hand covering mine on the white linen tablecloth. Sorry, I'd said, forcing a smile. Just taking it all in. Relax, Maya, he'd whispered, his smile so full of a genuine, uncomplicated love it had made my heart ache. This is your world now, too. And then he had produced the gift. A small, square box wrapped in rich, dark paper. Inside was another box made of polished wood. And inside that, Nestled on a bed of cream-colored silk was the watch. I knew enough about his world to know what Patek Philippe meant. It was not just a watch. It was a statement, an heirloom, an investment. It was the kind of object that was passed down through generations of men with names like his: Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, Prescott. I had stared at it, speechless. My mind was a frantic, panicked calculator. That watch costs more than my car. Watch costs more than my father's entire retirement fund. "Happy birthday, my love," he'd said, his eyes shining. "James," I'd whispered, unable to look away from the sheer, obscene value of the thing. I can't accept. It's too much." "Nonsense," he'd said, his voice full of a breezy, easy confidence that only comes from a lifetime of never having to look at a price tag. "It's a classic, it's timeless. It's just like you, just like us." But it wasn't just the money. It was something deeper. A cultural wire in my brain was short-circuiting. I thought of my Lola, my grandmother in Sabellum, a woman whose entire philosophy of life could be boiled down to a few powerful principles. She had always taught me that a gift should be a symbol of effort, not of wealth. Hand-woven scarf, a perfectly cooked meal, a jar of homemade mango jam. A gift that was too extravagant was not a gift at all. It was a burden. It created a debt, an utang na loob, a debt of gratitude that could never truly be repaid. It was a power play, a quiet, polite way of establishing dominance. This watch, this beautiful, terrible watch, felt like the heaviest thing in the world. Where I come from, I had tried to explain. My voice small, a gift like this. It's complicated. He had just laughed, a rich, easy sound. He didn't understand. He couldn't understand. "Don't be silly, Maya. This isn't complicated. It's a birthday present. I love you, and I wanted to give you something beautiful. That's all." He took the watch from the box, his movements so sure, so confident. He unclasped the cheap, sensible watch I was wearing and tossed it on the table. Then he fastened the Patek Philippe around my wrist. It was heavy, so heavy. "There," he'd said, admiring it. "Perfect. A perfect watch for my perfect girl." And I, a coward, had let him. I had swallowed my discomfort. I had silenced the voice of my grandmother in my head. And I had accepted the beautiful, expensive, and deeply complicated burden. I had chosen his world over my own, and I had been paying the price ever since. The fracture lines in our relationship began to appear a few months later. They were small at first. Little passive-aggressive digs. Always related to the one thing that truly separated us: money. He would see me working late at my desk, trying to freelance to make extra money for my loan payments. "You work so hard, my love," he'd say, his voice full of a pity that felt like a slap. "Maybe you should have gone to a state school. It would have been more manageable for you." We would be out with his friends, a coven of trust fund babies who worked cushy six-figure jobs. Their fathers had gotten for them. They would talk about their summer plans in the Hamptons, their winter ski trips to Aspen. I would be silent. And later in the car, James would say, "You were so quiet tonight, Maya. You should try to join the conversation." What could I say? That my summer plan was to hopefully afford a new window air conditioning unit. The digs became more direct, more cruel. He began to see my debt not as a consequence of my ambition, but as a flaw in my character. "My father is just worried. That's all," he said one night, after a tense dinner with his parents. "He thinks you're financial situation is a sign that you're not responsible, that you make poor life choices. Poor life choices. Going to my dream school, working my ass off for 2 degrees, taking on a mountain of debt to build a life for myself, these were poor life choices. But being born into a family that owned half of Manhattan, that was just good planning on his part. The watch on my wrist began to feel less like a gift and more like a taunt. A constant glittering reminder of the world I did not belong to. And the man who was beginning to seem less like my partner and more like my patron, my benefactor, my owner. He had given me a symbol of his wealth and was now punishing me for my lack of it. I look at the clock on my office wall. It's lunchtime. I close the student loan portal. The obscene number is burned onto the back of my eyelids. I look down at the Patek Philippe on my wrist. Its quiet, elegant ticking sounds for the first. Time like a countdown. My phone buzzes again. Another text from James. Decided on per se, 8 p.m., don't be late. It's not a question, it's a command. My treat, obviously. I stare at the watch. It is, according to a quick, heart-stopping Google search, currently valued at $83,000. Almost enough to erase that other terrible number that haunts my every waking moment. The watch is a symbol of our future, he had said. A timeless classic. And in that moment, a new, radical, and terrifying idea begins to form in my mind. A new kind of future. He is right. The watch is the key to my future. Just not the one he had in mind. The solution to my problem has been on. My wrist, a beautiful, heavy, ticking time bomb this entire time. And I am finally considering lighting the fuse. James's penthouse on the Upper East Side was not a home. It was an art installation about the concept of wealth. The walls were a stark gallery white. The furniture was a collection of sharp, uncomfortable-looking Italian geometric shapes. And the air itself felt sterile, filtered, devoid of any human scent. There were no photographs, no clutter, no books. It was the personal living space of a man who had successfully curated all personality and warmth out of his own life. It was the perfect stage for an execution. I arrived at 8 o'clock, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. The doorman, who had always been so friendly, gave me a strange, pitying look as he let me in. He knew. Of course he knew. James's life was a series of managed, top-down decisions. I was about to be downsized. James was waiting for me, standing by the massive, floored-ceiling window that overlooked Central Park. He was not dressed for dinner at per se. He was wearing a simple, dark cashmere sweater and trousers. It was his serious conversation outfit. He didn't come to kiss me. He didn't even smile. He just gestured to the white, tomb-like sofa. Maya, he said, his voice the calm, neutral tone of a CEO about to announce layoffs. Thank you for coming. Can I get you a drink? Water? I'm fine, I said, my voice coming out as a reedy whisper. Sat on the edge of the sofa. It was as uncomfortable as it looked. He didn't sit with me. He remained standing, pacing slowly in front of the window. A man preparing to deliver a prepared statement. I asked you here tonight. He began his back to me because I believe in transparency and directness. A relationship is something I have valued greatly over the past 2 years, and you are a person for whom I have a great deal of affection. Affection. He used the word a man uses for a well-behaved pet. But as I looked to the future, he continued, turning to face me. His expression one of grave, serious sincerity as I begin to map out the next 5, 10, 20 years of my life I have come to realize that a successful partnership, whether in business or in life, must be built on a foundation of shared values and aligned assets. Aligned assets. My blood ran cold. This was not a breakup. It was a hostile takeover. "You are a brilliant, wonderful woman, Maya," he said, and the compliment was the cruelest part of it all. "Your ambition, your passion for your work. It's admirable, truly." He took a breath, the final condescending preamble before the kill shot. But a partnership is also a balance sheet. And when I look at our balance sheet, I am forced to confront a significant, and I'm afraid, insurmountable liability. I knew what was coming. I could feel the word, the ugly, shameful word, forming in his mouth. "Your student loan debt," he said, his voice now full of a quiet, clinical judgment. $100,000. It is an unacceptable liability. The words hung in the sterile, silent air of his perfect, empty apartment. He had taken the single greatest achievement of my life, my education, the thing I had sacrificed and fought and worked for, the thing my immigrant parents had dreamed of for me. And he had reduced it to a line item in the liability column of our relationship's balance sheet. It's not the money itself. "You must understand," he continued, now in the full condescending flow of his own monstrous logic. "It's what the debt represents. It represents a fundamental difference in our life paths, in our financial DNA. My family, we build wealth. We preserve capital. We don't take on that kind of debt. It is, if I'm being completely honest, a reflection of poor planning, a lack of foresight. The sheer, breathtaking, aristocratic arrogance of it was so profound, it was almost beautiful. He, a man who had been born on third base and thought he'd hit a triple, was lecturing me, a woman who had fought her way into the stadium from the parking lot. On the concept of foresight, the initial shock was a physical thing. A wave of cold that washed over me, leaving me numb and breathless. But then a new feeling began to rise up, hot, powerful, and deeply righteous anger. It was the anger of my father, who had worked 2 jobs without a single day of complaint. It was the anger of my mother, who had pushed me to study, to be better, to reach for a world she had never been allowed to enter. It was the anger of my Lola in Siblum, a woman who had survived a war and a dictatorship and had taught me that a person's only true wealth was their own unbreakable spirit. I stood up. My body was trembling, but my voice, when it came out, was steady. "A liability?" I asked, my voice a low, dangerous whisper. "You think my education is a liability?" He looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He had expected tears. He had not expected this. "My parents," I began, and the story came pouring out. A torrent of truth in his sterile white world came to this country with 2 suitcases and $100. They worked in kitchens, they cleaned houses. They saved every single penny, not for themselves, for me, for my future. They didn't have a portfolio to pass down to me, James. They had a belief in the power of an education to lift a family up, to build a new world. I took a step closer to him, my eyes burning. "This debt you find so distasteful. That is not a monument to my poor planning. It is a monument to their sacrifice. It is the cost of my dream, a dream they worked their fingers to the bone to give me." I walked out of New York University with 2 degrees and $100,000 of debt, and it was the proudest goddamn. day of my life, because I had earned it. My name, my dungog, my honor was built on that work, not on a trust fund. I pointed to the Patek Philippe on my wrist, the heavy, cold, and suddenly obscene object. You see this? I asked. This? Watch. This is a liability. This is a frivolous, empty, meaningless display of wealth that serves no purpose other than to announce to the world that you have never had to work for anything in your entire life. He stared at me, his handsome face a mask of pure aristocratic shock. He had never been spoken to like this before. He had never had his own world, his own values. So thoroughly and completely rejected, I knew you would get emotional about this, he said, his voice a cold, dismissive sneer. It was his last line of defense. To reduce my righteous fury to a woman's hysteria, emotional. I laughed, a real, true, and utterly mirthless laugh. Oh, I'm not emotional, James. I'm just clear. I am seeing you for the first time with absolute clarity. And what I see is a small, hollow, and profoundly pathetic man. I walked to the door. I did not cry. My tears were a gift he had not earned. You are right about one thing, I said, my hand on the doorknob. We do have a fundamental difference in our financial DNA. I have a debt, yes. But I will work, and I will pay it off, and I will be free. You have a fortune, but you will be in debt to your own empty, heartless philosophy for the rest of your life. I turned and walked out. I walked out of his perfect, sterile apartment, out of his perfect, sterile life. I left him standing alone in his glass tower, a king in a kingdom of nothing at all. The subway ride back to Queens was a journey through a different kind of hell. The anger, so hot and righteous in his apartment, had begun to cool, leaving behind the raw, aching, and deeply personal pain of a broken heart. The man I had loved, the man I had thought I was building a future with, had been an illusion. He had looked at me, at my life, at my family's sacrifice, and he had found me wanting. He had weighed me, he had measured me, and he had declared me a liability. It was a judgment I knew would haunt me for a very long time. I sat there, staring at my own reflection in the dark subway window, a ghost of a girl on a train. And on my wrist, the Patek Philippe gleamed, a cold, heavy, and mocking reminder of the man who had given it to me. It was a piece of him, a piece of his toxic, judgmental world, and it was still on me. A beautiful, expensive, and unbearable shackle. The dream was over. The wedding was off. The man I loved was a monster. I was heartbroken. I was humiliated. And I was still, after all of it, drowning in debt. I had won the argument. But I had lost everything else, or so I thought. I had no idea that the very symbol of my humiliation, the beautiful, heavy handcuff on my wrist, was about to become the key to my own liberation. The morning after the end of my world, I woke up in my own bed in Queens, and for a blissful, ignorant half-second, I thought it had all been a nightmare. Then I saw it. The Patek Philippe watch sitting on my nightstand where I had dropped. Its rose gold case catching the morning light. It was real. The sterile white penthouse, the cruel corporate jargon speech. The look of profound disappointment in his eyes when he realized I was not going to cry was all real. The heartbreak, when it came rushing back, was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. I went through the motions of getting ready for work like an automaton. I showered. I brushed my teeth. I put on my sensible nonprofit employee clothes. Every action felt pointless, robotic. I was a ghost haunting the machinery of my own life. I had to call my parents and tell them the wedding was off. It was one of the most difficult phone calls I have ever had to make. My mother's heartbroken gasp, my father's quiet, simmering rage on my behalf, it was a fresh wave of grief. They had loved James. They had believed in him too. I had not just been fooled. I had brought the wolf into my own family's home. The shame was a constant, low-grade fever. I walked through the city feeling like everyone could see it on me. The brand of the girl who was not good enough, the girl who was a liability. The watch sat on my nightstand, a silent, glittering accusation. I couldn't wear it. The feel of the alligator strap on my skin felt like his hand on my wrist, a cold, judgmental weight. But I couldn't throw it away either. It was too valuable. It was a beautiful, terrible, and very expensive paradox. So it just sat there, the quiet, elegant ticking of its Swiss movement, a constant. Maddening reminder of the man who had broken my heart. The idea, when it first came to me, felt like a sacrilegious, blasphemous thought. It arrived a few days. After the breakup, I was sitting at my desk, staring at the familiar, monstrous number on my student loan portal, a number that now felt twice as heavy, twice as hopeless. And my eyes drifted to the watch sitting on my nightstand. The two objects, the two numbers, the two great defining burdens of my life. One of debt and one of unearned luxury seemed to be in a silent conversation with each other. And a wild, radical, and deeply terrifying thought sparked in my mind. What if one could destroy the other? I dismissed it immediately. It was crazy. It was wrong. You don't sell a gift. A gift, even a tainted one, is still a gift. What? It would be petty. It would be a new low. It would be, kind of revenge. For a full week, my mind was a battlefield. The well-behaved, rule-following, good girl Maya was at war with a new, colder, and far more ruthless version of myself I had not yet met. It's unethical, the good girl would argue. It was a gift of love, even if the love is gone. Was it a gift of love? The new, cold voice would whisper back. Or was it a down payment? A branding exercise? A way for him to mark his territory, to put his expensive label on you. Selling it is a bitter, vengeful act, the good girl insisted. No, the cold voice replied. Keeping it is a bitter act. Letting it sit here, a daily reminder of your own humiliation, that is the act of a victim. Selling it, using its power to free yourself from the very thing he used to shame you. That is the act of a survivor. I was trapped in a loop of my own making, a prison of politeness and propriety. I needed another voice, a voice of wisdom, a voice that knew how to be a survivor. I needed my Lola. I called her in Blum. That weekend. It was Saturday night for me, Sunday morning for her. She was on her porch drinking her coffee, the brilliant Philippine sun illuminating her beautiful, wrinkled face. Apokeo Maya, she said, her voice a warm, familiar comfort. Your mother told me the news. My heart is broken for you. Okay, Lola, I lied. She just looked at me through the screen, her eyes, which had seen 80 years of joy and sorrow, seeing right through my brave, pathetic facade. No, you are not, she said gently, but you will be. I took a deep breath and I told her. I told her about the watch. I told her about its absurd value. And I told her about the wild, terrible, and tempting idea I had. I told her about my ethical dilemma, about the war in my head. I expected her to be shocked. I expected a lecture on propriety, on taking the high road. I did not get one. My grandmother listened to my entire tortured moral dilemma. And when I was done, she threw her head back and laughed. A great, booming, wonderful cackle that seemed to shake the tropical flowers on her porch. Double quotes, I aba knack. She roared, wiping a tear of mirth from her eye. You children of America! You think too much. You make everything so complicated. She leaned in close to the camera, her expression now one of fierce, pragmatic, and deeply unimpeachable wisdom. Let me tell you something my own mother told me, she said. A gift is not a thing. A gift is the love that is in the thing. If the love is gone, then the gift is just a thing, an empty shell. She looked at me, her eyes full of a fierce, liberating fire. This boy, she continued, her voice now a low, sharp hiss, he did not just take his love back. He took your honor, your dungog. He used your education, the thing our family sacrificed for, as a weapon to shame you. He has no honor. So the gift he gave you, it has no honor. It is an empty shell. It is just a thing. A very, very expensive thing. The clarity of her words was a physical force, a cleansing wind that blew all the cobwebs of my guilt and my indecision away. Your debt is real, she said, her voice now gentle again. The weight on your shoulders is real. Your freedom, that is the most real thing of all. This boy gave you a beautiful golden cage, but he also, in his foolishness, gave you the key. Sell the cage, apropos. Sell the thing. And use the key to let yourself out, sell the cage, use the key. The simple, beautiful, and utterly perfect poetry of it settled my heart. The war was over. The cold, ruthless voice had won. Thank you, Lola, I whispered, my voice thick with a new, profound gratitude. You are a Reyes, she said, her voice full of a pride that was a balm to my wounded soul. And you are a Cruz. You are a woman of two worlds. You have the heart of Sibylam and the mind of New York. Use them both. The next day, I woke up a different woman. The grief was still there, a dull ache in the background. But it was no longer the main event. My mission was clear. My purpose was renewed. I was not a victim anymore. I was a freedom fighter. And my first act of liberation was about to take place in the heart of the enemy's territory, Midtown Manhattan. The journey from my apartment in Queens to the Diamond District on 47th Street felt like a pilgrimage. I was a soldier, moving from my quiet, humble barracks into the glittering, high-stakes heart of the battle. The Diamond District is a world unto itself, a single, frantic city block that feels like it's crackling with a raw, nervous energy. The street was crowded with Hasidic diamond dealers, tourists, and hawkers. Their voices a chaotic symphony of a dozen different languages. It was a world of pure, unadulterated commerce. A world where everything and everyone had a price. It was James's world. And for the first time, I did not feel like an imposter in it. I was not here to admire the wealth. I was here to claim my own. I had done my research. I wasn't going to a pawn shop. I was going to one of the most reputable high-end appraisers. and dealers in the city, a quiet, discreet office on an upper floor of a tall, anonymous building. I walked in, my heart a steady, determined drum. The watch was in its original polished wood box, inside a simple canvas tote bag. My weapon was concealed. The appraiser was an old, weary man named Mr. Goldstein. He had a gray, tired face, and he peered at the world through a pair of thick spectacles. He looked like a man who had seen every possible story of love, greed, and betrayal that could be told through the medium of a precious stone or a piece of gold. He was not impressed by my story. He was only interested in the object. I placed the box on his desk and opened it. He looked down at the watch and the first time, a flicker of genuine interest appeared in his tired eyes. "Ah," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. "A Calatrava rose gold. A beautiful, simple, and very honest watch." He picked it up with a jeweler's cloth, his movements practiced and sure. He wound it, holding it to his ear, listening to the quiet, perfect music of its movement. He examined the face, the clasp, the serial number with a loop. The silence in his small office stretched on for what felt like an eternity. I waited, my breath held. Finally, he set it down. He looked up at me over the top of his spectacles. "The market for these is very strong right now," he said, his voice a flat, professional drone. He wrote a number on a small white card and pushed it across the desk. "I can offer you this in a cashier's check." Today, I looked down at the card. The number written on it in a neat, precise hand made the air leave my lungs in a silent rush. $83,500. It was more than I had even dared to hope. It was my entire student loan debt, and then some. It was a new apartment. It was a nest egg. It was a new life. It was not just the key to my cage. It was the deed to a whole new world. I looked from the number on the card to the beautiful, terrible watch, the symbol of my humiliation, still resting on the velvet cloth. And then I looked at Mr. Goldstein. "I'll take it," I said, and my voice did not tremble. The number on the small white card seemed to hum with a strange, powerful energy. $83,500. It was not just a number. It was a key. It was an escape hatch. It was the precise monetary value of my own liberation. I looked from the number to the tired professional face of Mr. Goldstein, the appraiser, and then to the Patek Philippe watch. My beautiful, terrible shackle, still resting on the black velvet cloth. In that moment, the last of my sentimental, romantic, and deeply foolish hesitation evaporated. The ghost of the girl who had accepted that gift, the girl who had believed in that love, was finally, truly gone. And the woman who was left in her place was a pragmatist. "I'll take it," I said, and my voice was a clear, steady, and unfamiliar thing. It was the voice of a woman who was about to become the sole, undisputed CEO of her own life. The transaction itself was a quiet, anticlimactic affair. There were forms to sign, authenticating the watch's provenance and legally transferring ownership. As I signed my name on the dotted line, I felt a profound sense of release. I was not just selling a piece of jewelry. I was signing my own declaration of independence. I was formally, legally, and financially severing the last toxic tie too. James and his world, Mr. Goldstein, disappeared into a back room and returned a few minutes later with a cashier's check. He handed it to me. It was a simple, boring-looking piece of paper, but it felt heavier, more real, and infinitely more valuable than the watch ever had. The watch was a symbol of his power. This check. This was a symbol of mine. A pleasure doing business with you. Miss Cruz, he said with a small professional nod. You too, Mr. Goldstein, I replied. I put the check in my purse, turned, and walked out of his quiet, dusty office, leaving. The ghost of my old relationship behind me on a piece of black velvet. I was done. The cage was sold. And now it was time to use the key. My bank was 12 blocks away. I could have taken a taxi. I could have taken the subway. But I chose to walk. On this day, Wednesday, August 6th, the day of my own personal liberation, I wanted to feel the solid pavement of New York City under my feet. The walk from the Diamond District on 47th Street to my bank near Bryant Park was a journey through the heart of the city, the heart of the world I had fought so hard to be a part of. The city was a chaotic, beautiful, and indifferent symphony. The roar of the traffic, the shouts of the street vendors, the perfume of 1,000 different kinds of food, the sheer, overwhelming, and glorious crush of humanity. For the past 2 years, I had walked these same streets feeling the weight of my debt, the weight of my relationship, the weight of not being good enough. Every glittering storefront, every expensive restaurant, it felt like a quiet accusation, a reminder of the world I could see but never truly enter. But today, with the check for $83,000 tucked safely in my purse, the city felt different. It felt like mine. The tall, arrogant buildings no longer seemed to mock me. They seemed to be saluting me. The chaotic energy of the crowd no longer felt overwhelming. It felt like a celebration. I was no longer a visitor here. I was a citizen. I had earned my place. As I walked, my mind was a slideshow of the last 2 years. I saw James, his handsome, smiling face on our first date, the easy charm that had so completely disarmed me. I saw his face on my birthday, his eyes shining as he fastened the heavy cold watch to my wrist. And I saw his face in his sterile white penthouse. His features twisted into a mask of cold, condescending judgment as he had declared me a liability. He thought my debt was my weakness, a sign of my poor planning, my working-class roots. He was wrong. My debt was my strength. It was the physical proof that I had bet on myself, that I had invested in my own mind, my own future. It was a testament to the values my family had instilled in me, the values that had been passed down from the small, dusty town of Sibilum. Half a world away, I thought of my Lola, my grandmother, and her fierce, pragmatic wisdom. I thought of the Filipino concept of utang na loob, the debt of gratitude. For 2 years, I had been living under the weight of an unspoken, unpayable debt to James. I had felt grateful for his generosity, for his paying for the fancy dinners, for the gift of the watch. I had let that gratitude curdle into a feeling of obligation, of inferiority. I had let him be the benefactor, and I, the grateful, indebted recipient. But my real debt, my utang na loob, was not to him. It was to my parents. It was to my grandparents. It was to the generations of my family who had worked in rice paddies and fishing boats, who had sacrificed everything so that I, their daughter, their granddaughter, could have the one thing they never had a choice. The $100,000 debt I had taken on to go to NYU was not a mark of shame. It was my half of a sacred bargain. They had given me the opportunity. I had seized it, and this debt was the price. It was a debt of honor, James, with his inherited wealth and his transactional soul, could never understand that. He saw my debt as a stain on my character. And now I was about to use the empty, meaningless symbol of his world to honor the deepest, most meaningful debt of my own. I was going to use his Patek Philippe to pay for my parents' dream. The beautiful, poetic justice of it was so profound. So perfect, it made me want to laugh out loud in the middle of a crowded Manhattan street. I arrived at the bank. It was a large, impersonal branch of a national chain, a place of quiet, mundane transactions. I walked past the line for the tellers and went to the desk for private banking, a service I had never been wealthy enough to use. A young woman in a sharp suit looked up at me. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I need to make a wire transfer." I sat down and took the check out of my purse. I endorsed the back and pushed it across the desk to her. She looked at the check, at the amount, and then back at me, her professional, polite mask slipping for just a fraction of a second. Her eyes widened. I could see the question in them. "How does a girl like you get a check like this?" She recovered quickly. "Of course, Miss Cruz. And where will you be transferring this amount to?" I took out a piece of paper where I had written down the routing and account numbers I had looked up 1,000 times. The numbers that were burned into my brain. "I'll be transferring the full amount," I said, my voice steady, "to the United States Department of Education." The bank officer just stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. She had, I am quite sure, never processed a transaction quite like this one. She typed silently for a few minutes. The screen of her computer was angled away from me, but I knew what it said. I knew my own student loan balance down to the last. Miserable cent, $98,742.18. The check was not enough to cover the whole thing. It would leave a little over $15,000, but it was the lion's share. It was the mountain. The rest was just a hill I could climb on my own. She turned her monitor towards me. "Okay, Miss Cruz," she said, her voice full of a new, quiet respect. "The total payment amount will be $83,500. I just need you to confirm the details and enter your PIN." I looked at the screen, at the numbers, at the name of my creditor, and then at the beautiful, glorious, and life-altering button that said Confirm Transfer. I took a deep breath, and I pressed it. For a moment, nothing happened. And then the screen refreshed. A new page loaded. It was my student loan account, updated in real time. But the big, red, angry number at the top was gone. The number that had been the defining, terrifying fact of my adult life was gone. And in its place was a new number. A beautiful, perfect, and holy number. Current balance, $15,242.18. And underneath it, big, green, glorious letters. Payment processed. Thank you. The weight that lifted off my shoulders was a physical thing. It was a decade of stress, of anxiety, of sleepless nights, of saying no to dinners with friends, of the constant low-grade humming fear of a debt I thought I would never escape. All of it gone in an instant. I felt so light I thought I might actually float out of my chair. I could breathe. For the first time since I was 18 years old, I could actually, truly breathe. I thanked the bank officer, who was now looking at me with a genuine, admiring smile. I walked out of the bank and back into the brilliant, chaotic, and beautiful New York City afternoon. The city was the same, but I was a different woman. The quiet, insecure, working-class girl who was ashamed of her debt was gone. The woman who walked out of that bank was a woman who had faced down her own demons, A woman who had taken the weapon of her oppressor and used it to set herself free. I was not a liability. I was an asset. My net worth, for the first time, felt like it was finally, truly my own. I was free. I walked out of the bank and into the bright, chaotic, and suddenly beautiful world of a New York City afternoon. The city was the same. The roaring traffic, the bustling crowds, the towering, indifferent skyscrapers. But I was different. A massive, invisible weight I had been carrying on my shoulders for 6 years was just gone. I felt light. I felt clean. I felt a giddy, unfamiliar, and slightly hysterical sense of pure, unadulterated freedom. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell a complete stranger on the street that I was, for the first time in my adult life, no longer a debtor. The subway ride back to Queens was the opposite of the journey I had taken just 2 days before. It was not a descent into the underworld. It was a triumphant ascent. I looked at my own reflection in the dark window, and I did not see a ghost. I saw a woman I had not seen in a very long time. She looked strong. She looked happy. She looked free. The heavy gilded handcuff was gone from my wrist, and in its place was just my own bare and beautifully unadorned skin. When I got back to my small apartment, the first thing I did was open my laptop and log back into the student loan portal. I just wanted to see it again. The beautiful, perfect, and life-altering number. Current balance, $15,242.18. I looked at the number, and I did something I hadn't done in days. I cried. But these were not the hot, bitter tears of humiliation. I had cried in James's penthouse. These were tears of joy, of relief, of a profound, soul-deep, and hard-won catharsis. As I sat there, in the quiet of my own home, a new feeling began to emerge alongside the joy. It was a need to articulate what had happened, a need to tell the story. Not just for myself, but for every other person who had ever been made to feel small, to feel ashamed, to feel like a liability because they had dared to dream bigger than their bank account. My revenge on James had been a private act of financial liberation. But the story deserved to be public. It was a good story. A story about class, about values, about a very, very expensive watch, and I knew exactly where to tell it. I opened a new browser tab. I typed in the address, reddit.com/r/Emmett, he asshole. I stared at the blank submission box for a long time. Then I began to write. *** title. Ayita for selling the $80,000 watch. My wealthy ex-boyfriend gave me to pay off the student loans he dumped. Me for ***, high, Reddit. Longtime reader, first-time poster. This is a wild one, so please bear with me. I, 24F, just got out of a 2-year relationship with my ex-boyfriend, James 26M. We come from very, very different worlds. I'm the daughter of Filipino immigrants. My family's philosophy has always been about education, hard work, and sacrifice. They worked multiple jobs so I could go to my dream school, NYU, and I worked my way through, but I still graduated with a mountain of student loan debt just under $100,000. It's a huge burden, but I've always seen it as a symbol of my family's belief in me. It's a debt of honor, James, on the other hand, comes from old money. The kind of wealth that is quiet, massive, and multi-generational. He's a wonderful, charming person in many ways. And for a long time, I thought we were happy. He never seemed to care that I was a normal working class girl. But over time, little comments started to slip out. He'd make jokes about my frugal habits. He'd offer to help me manage my finances. It was all couched in the language of love, but it felt like judgment. For my birthday last year, he gave me a gift, a Patek Philippe watch, a quick. Google search told me it was worth over $80,000. I was horrified. Where I come from, a gift that extravagant isn't a gift. It's a burden. It's a power play. Kay tried to refuse, but he insisted. He said it was a symbol of our timeless future together. Fast forward to this week. He broke up with me. His reason. He sat me down in his sterile white penthouse and gave me a corporate-style speech about how he couldn't invest in a long-term partnership with someone who had my level of financial liability. He told me to my face that my student loan debt was a reflection of poor life choices and a sign that I was not on his level. He used the very thing my family sacrificed everything for as the reason to throw me away. I was, and I quote, an unacceptable liability. So I was left heartbroken, humiliated, and still drowning in debt. And I was also left with an $80,000 watch on my wrist. A watch he had told me was a symbol of our future. A future that he had just made clear would not be happening. So yesterday, I took the watch to a reputable appraiser who confirmed its value. And this afternoon, I sold it. I took the cashier's check for $83,500. I walked to my bank and I paid off the vast majority of my student loan debt in a single transaction. The debt he used to shame me is now gone, paid for by the symbol of his own shallow, materialistic world. I feel free. I feel powerful. But a small part of me feels a little guilty. It was a gift after all. My friends are divided. One says I'm a legend. The other says I should have given it back. So, Reddit, I ask you, Aita, for selling his ridiculously expensive gift to solve the very problem he dumped me for. I reread the post. It was all there. The whole ugly, beautiful, and deeply satisfying story. I took a deep breath, and I clicked the post button. For a few minutes, nothing. Just the lonely number 1 next to my own automatic upvote. I felt a wave of anxiety. What if they all agree with him? What if I really am the asshole? Then the first comment appeared. NTA, not the asshole. Not even a little bit. That wasn't a gift. It was a leash. You didn't just sell it. You took it off then. Another. NTA. The man literally told you that your relationship was a balance sheet. Hey, and you were a liability. So you did what any good accountant would do. You liquidated a non-essential asset to pay off a debt. It's not just revenge. It's fiscally responsible. And then the floodgates opened. My post exploded. It shot to the top of the AITA subreddit. Then it hit the front page of Reddit itself. My phone began to vibrate with notifications, a frantic buzzing drumbeat of public validation. The comments were a glorious, overwhelming, and hilarious chorus of support.nta. He didn't just give you a gift. He gave you a golden parachute out of a crashing relationship. You were right to pull the ripcord. NTA. The irony is so thick, you could cut it with a diamond den-crusted knife. He called your education a liability, so you used his empty symbol of wealth to pay for it. That's not just revenge. That's poetry. NTA, as a fellow child of Filipino immigrants, I just want to say, Queen, you honored your ancestors and paid your debts. He's the one with no tongue, nah lube. Your Lola is proud of you, wherever she is. The story went viral. It was picked up by BuzzFeed, by Bored Panda, by a dozen different online news aggregators. Woman gets perfect revenge on snobby ex-boyfriend. This Aida post is the most satisfying thing you'll read all day. I sat in my small Queens apartment, bathed in the blue glow of my laptop screen, and I read every single comment. It was a wave of support from thousands of strangers all over the world. They were all seeing what I had finally seen, that I was not the one who was lacking. He was. They were not just judging him. They were celebrating me. The shame that had been a heavy cloak on my shoulders for 2 years was gone, burned away, by the bright, warm light of 1,000 strangers telling me I had done the right thing. A few days later, after the internet storm had begun to die down, I made one last call. To my Lola, I told her the whole story. About the sale, about the student loans being gone, and about the Reddit posts that had been read by millions of people. She was quiet for a long moment when I finished. So she said, her voice full of a quiet, profound pride. You took the empty gift from the boy with no honor, and you used it to honor the sacrifices of your family. And then you told the whole world the story. She let out a small, happy chuckle. That is good, Apoko. You did not just build a better boat. You taught the whole village how to fish. I ended the call and looked around my small, quiet apartment. It no longer felt like a place of struggle. It felt like a place of peace. A place that was truly, completely my own. The watch was gone. The debt was gone. The man was gone. All the heavy, expensive things that had been weighing me down were gone. All that was left was me. Cruz, the daughter of immigrants, the granddaughter of a wise woman from Cybalam. A woman who was, finally, gloriously, and completely free. And that was a treasure that no amount of money could ever buy. The days after my Reddit post went viral were surreal. My life, which had suddenly become so quiet and simple, was now filled with the strange, distant roar of internet fame. I was anonymous, but my story had taken on a life of its own. It was everywhere. Blog posts were written about it. TikToks were made reenacting the breakup. I even heard 2 women on the subway talking about the Patek Philippe girl, and I had to bury my face in my book to hide my grin. I had, in a strange, unintentional way, become a minor folk hero, a patron saint for everyone who had ever felt small in a relationship, for everyone who had ever been crushed by the weight of debt. The validation was a warm, healing balm on the still tender wound of the breakup. The thousands of comments, the messages from strangers sharing their own stories, all of it reinforced what my Lola had told me. I had done the right thing. I had sold the cage and used the key. My anonymity, however, was a fragile thing. I had been careful in my post, using fake names and omitting identifying details. But the story was specific. The watch was specific. And the world of the super rich in New York City is a very, very small town. I knew it was only a matter of time before the story got back to James. I braced myself for the fallout, for a furious phone call, for a letter from his high-powered lawyers. What I got a week after the post had gone viral was an email. It was from an unfamiliar address, a generic Gmail account. The subject line was simply my name. Maya. My heart gave a small, hard thump. I knew who it was from. I took a deep breath and I opened it. The email was not an apology. It was a tirade. A long, beautifully written, and utterly delusional masterpiece of aristocratic rage. Maya, I am aware of the story you have chosen to share with the anonymous, unwashed masses of the internet. My sister sent me the link, thinking it was some kind of joke. I have, of course, read it. And I must say, I am not angry. I am profoundly disappointed. I am disappointed that you would take the private, intimate details of our relationship and parade them in a public cesspool for the entertainment of strangers. I am disappointed that you have chosen to frame a difficult, adult decision as a cartoonish melodrama of good and evil. And I am most disappointed that you have so little respect for yourself and for the memory of what we shared, that you would stoop to such a crass, classless, and frankly, pathetic cry for attention. You have painted me as a villain, a snob, a monster, all because I was honest with you. All because I had the courage to speak a simple financial truth. Our worlds were different. Our futures were incompatible. That is not an insult. It is a fact. I ended our relationship with honesty and discretion. You have ended it with a public tantrum and the matter of the watch. The fact that you would take a gift, a beautiful, timeless symbol of the affection I had for you, and sell it like a common pawnbroker. It is the ultimate proof that my assessment of your character, of your poor life choices, was more accurate than I could have ever imagined. You claim to have done it for your freedom, a noble sentiment. But what you have truly done is prove that, in the end, you are just as materialistic as the world you claim to despise. You have reduced our entire relationship to its cash value. I do not expect you to understand. Your world and the world of the slack-jawed simpletons who are currently cheering for you on that website is not my world. My world has rules. It has codes of conduct. And one of those codes is that we handle our affairs with privacy and with dignity. It is a code you have now violated in the most spectacular way possible. I do not want an apology. I simply wanted you to know the depth of my disappointment. You have confirmed my every fear. I truly hope that the fleeting, vulgar satisfaction of your public revenge was worth it. James, I read the email once. Then I read it again. And I did something I had not done in a very long time. I laughed. Real, deep, and truly joyous. Laugh. The kind of laugh that comes from a place of pure, unadulterated, and liberated delight. It was the single most beautiful gift he could have possibly given me. Because in his long, eloquent, and furious email, there was not a single word of remorse, not a flicker of self-awareness. He was not sorry for what he had done. He was only sorry that I had told people about it. He was not angry that he had been cruel. He was angry that he had been seen. He still, after all of this, truly, genuinely believed that he was the victim. His pride, his class, his entire worldview was so impenetrable that the verdict of thousands of people, the clear, objective truth of the situation, had simply bounced off it. And in that moment, the last lingering microscopic shred of any feeling I had for him, love, anger, hurt, anything at all, just vanished. It was gone. All that was left was a vast, quiet, and profound sense of pity for him. He was a prisoner in a cage he could not see, a cage built of his own arrogance, and he would likely spend the rest of his life there, completely, utterly, and happily alone. I thought about what to write back. My first instinct was to draft a long, furious point-by-point rebuttal. To defend myself? To rage at him. But then I thought of my Lola. I thought of her quiet, powerful wisdom. Do not waste your breath, arguing with a rooster who thinks he makes the sun rise. She had told me once about a particularly arrogant man in her village. You just let him crow. The sun will rise with or without him. And eventually he will grow tired, and the village will have a nice dinner. James was the rooster, crowing about his own importance in the dark. There was nothing I could say that would change his mind. There was no argument I could win, because he was not capable of understanding he had lost. So I did not write a long reply. I did not defend myself. I did not argue. I simply hit reply. I deleted his entire long and tortured email. I wrote a single, simple, and perfect sentence. Subject, my dear James. The jury has spoken, and then I pasted the link to the Reddit thread. With its 30,000 upvotes and its 5,000 comments below my sentence. I hit send, and then, for the first and final and most satisfying time, I blocked his email address. I closed my laptop. The conversation was over. The last tie was cut. The last word had been said, not by me and not by him, but by the great, anonymous, and surprisingly wise jury of the internet. I stood up and walked to my small window, looking out at the endless, beautiful, and chaotic city of New York. The city was mine now. The future was mine. My debt was paid. My honor was clean. And my heart, for the first time in a very long time, was quiet. It was not the quiet of emptiness. It was the quiet of peace. The quiet of a story that has finally, truly, and completely found its end.